I applied for seniors housing, and I was denied because of my felonies. Now, I haven't had one in 18 years.
The very first thing they told me was that I needed to get a teacher credential, so I wrote in Sacramento my letter explaining my felony, and I have a letter back from the head, Mr. Smith, the head of the division, that said if I committed murder, that he could make an exception for me and they could have a hearing, but since it was narcotics, that there was no exception, that I'd never get a teacher credential.
What we want is our full rights as citizens and the ability to just start over, to just rebuild our lives with no marks against us.
The question for me is, when is enough enough? You know, when does the punishment end?
All of Us or None is a grassroots organizing effort that former prisoners and some family members are undertaking all over the United States to try to build some unity and build a new civil rights movement that will really fight against the discrimination that felons face.
When I go get a job, and if they deny me for a felony or deny me because I'm black, it feels about the same. My kids are still fucking starving. So it feels about the same. I still can't pay the electric bill. I still can't pay the phone bill. I still can't move around and enjoy that pursuit of happiness in the degree that everybody else enjoys in this society.
There had been a theft over in South Radiology, and they said that they decided to do a background check on everyone in the department, and that it really didn't matter that I hadn't worked over in South Radiology in the last 2 months. What happened was my criminal history, which included some felonies and misdemeanors, came up, and for that reason, I was discharged. I left there, mentally just whooped. Because I figured, I've been here for 10 long years. And I gave you 10 years of good attendance, good service. I had never been written up. And it left me really in a financial crisis.
People coming out of prison with felony convictions should not face the kinds of discrimination that we face, because that discrimination is what makes it almost impossible for us to reintegrate into society and reconstruct our lives.
And I just didn't feel like I got a fair shake at all. And it left me feeling, why did I even try to do better?
That discrimination what drives me. The same thing that drove King is what drives me. The same thing that drove Malcolm is what drives me. I think about All of Us or None as an organizing initiative because we need to organize for our civil rights.
My time was all juvenile time. And like a lot of young people, I was kind of caught up in the madness of the streets. I was gang affiliated. When I first came out, I felt like my record, and my family too, there's sort of that old way of thinking that it's something you brought shame to your family because you have a record. My mother felt like that's something I needed to be ashamed of, and at first I kind of internalized that, and I said, I need to keep this a secret. And I'm up in community college, and I'm meeting other students. They're like, well, where did you graduate from? And I'm like thinking, I took my GED in the hall, and I'm just lying, I'm lying because I don't want them to know about my past, and I felt ashamed about it.
If you go to somebody's dinner table on a Sunday and say, I've been in jail, you can watch change in attitude, just to have a felony, everybody treats you in a certain regard, So you can have a felony for possession of 2 pounds of marijuana and being treated as if you chopped off somebody's head.
I'm still terrified to this day to even look for a new job because I don't really know how to tell the employer, that I have been arrested. And are they going to reject me?
So All of Us are None is to organizing initiative to strengthen the voice of formerly incarcerated people because we don't have a voice.
Well, the organizing effort really started at the beginning of 2003. The first real embodiment of All of Us or None was a statewide strategy session that happened in Oakland in the beginning of March. And we invited almost 50 former prisoners who are organizers from around the state of California to come together and develop a strategy that would be a statewide strategy.
It started out with a Native American prayer, followed by passing the candle, which I brought from Africa.
This was one of the first anti-prison gatherings that I'd ever come across with that wasn't just politicized. Being politicized is something very important, but I also think because of all of that intergenerational trauma that's plagued our communities, that devastation, that there has to be a spiritual component.
We started with a strategy section asking people what was important.
Issues that we face in common, like the 3 strikes law, the deportation of juveniles away from their families,
Barriers to our employment, barriers to our reentry.
voting rights, the problems that people face with fast-track adoptions.
It was a strategy session. It was the first time that we brought former prisoners into one room and says, look, we need to talk to each other. And we did that across age, we did it across race, we did it across geography. It was the first time that we sat down and said, like, what's good for us? Let's sit down here and think about what's good for us. And let's speak in our own voice. For once, we can decide. We have the power to decide where we go with a struggle that we're developing. Some of the important conversations that we had wasn't structural conversations. What did it mean to be kicking it with other people about, man, are you having these kind of problems with your kids? Being if we can't gather, we can't even, if our kids is fucked up, maybe it comes as a result of us going to jail or going to prison. We don't know. They don't never let us sit down and talk to each other and say, it's like, what about this? Are your kids acting out? If we have no common identity, but we have common problems, we can't come up with a common solution unless we put our heads together.
So we had a 3-day meeting, and there was a lot of discussion about these different issues and how we could prioritize them, what we can work on together. And basically we made a pledge that we would build a statewide organization of former prisoners and our family members so that we can build some kind of movement that will really empower our communities and change things. We went on 3 weeks later to have a national meeting in New Orleans that was basically to explore the idea of uniting around certain principles. And there were 50 former prisoners from all over the country representing 16 different states. And we had discussions about how can we unite and work together better, how can we coordinate our efforts and learn from the lessons that have come up in other people's work. And it was a very successful meeting, and at the end of it we agreed that we would organize in a collective way around All of Us or None.
Slave, who is it that shall free you? Those in deepest darkness lying.
Conrad, only these can see you. Only they can hear you crying.
Everything or nothing, all of us or none.
One alone his lot can't better, either gun or fetter.
Everything or nothing, all of us or none. All of Us or None is the name of a poem by Bertolt Brecht. We felt that All of Us or None really embodied our feelings about the need for all of us to unite and for people to fight together to try to end the discrimination that we face and fight for our civil and human rights as people that deserve full rights like everybody else.
Sometimes a rock hits a pond, you don't know where those ripples are gonna go. But what we knew was that we affirmed our desire to push forward with certain objectives. What came out of New Orleans was a meeting in East Palo Alto.
I'd like to welcome you all to here at Free at Last to participate in this program here. A lot of us in here are in recovery from drugs and alcohol. And what we do is we get clean and we become what they call productive members of society. But Dorsey is kind of like really impressed upon me. There's some other things that we need to be doing.
What I'm suggesting to you is that within Narcotics Anonymous, within Alcoholics Anonymous, it's not only filled with recovering addicts and alcoholics. The room is also filled with us who have committed felonies. Some of us right now can get past the piss test, but it's the felony that we can't get past. Ron, you told me that the felony impacted you. How did it impact you, bro?
Yeah, I went to work and they had just told me the day before that I was their best trainee and I was getting my ride. When I went to work, they told me that they couldn't use my services. And they said that a felon had just robbed an armored car. And I asked them, well, what did that have to do with me? And they said, well, yes, I mean, it's not us, it's the district manager, and it came down from front. But what really happened was I thought about, and I asked him, I said, well, I told you I had a felony before we started the training, and you acknowledged me being truthful. He said, yeah, that's before, you understand me, the felon did the robbery. We need to let you go. And they let me go.
Yeah. Like for the IKEA thing, because I need to say I've been on 4 interviews for IKEA, passed the drug test, been honest, and when I had my last interview like a couple weeks ago, the lady said, well, you're really strongly considered, under consideration. And, she finally asked me about the box, that you were talking about. So I explained to her that, I'm a recovering addict, and she was like, well, can you tell me about these felonies? And I said, yeah, I don't have nothing to hide from you today, and I'm qualified to do it probably better than a lot of people is there.
Especially from a women's perspective, we have a lot of issues with felony convictions. For instance, if you're in prison, and you're in prison for more than 15 months, they can just take your kid forever. And I mean, some of you probably have experienced also one-strike evictions. If you have you been kicked out of public housing?
They sent me a letter saying that I was disqualified because of a drug conviction I caught in 1986, mind you. This was 13 years prior to this happening.
Yeah. They will evict the whole family if somebody in that family's got a drug felony conviction. That's just true.
Yeah.
So, our perspective is we've got to band together and do something about this. And there's no reason in the world that we can't. We don't have a lot of money, but we got a lot of people.
Is what I'm telling you is that as a result of our felony convictions in this community, that we are having our civil rights violated. All of Us or None is the birth of a civil rights movement for people formerly incarcerated with felonies. That's what we're building.
This is real good. This is a good start. But I want to see it continue, because we have a habit of getting all fired up about something, and then we don't have that fire put up under us, because some of us can't carry this message that you just carried in the way that you carried it, or the way that you might have carried it, and don't really understand what's going on. You have to remember that some of us it just sounds good right now. Job. I hear everybody in here talking about they can't get a job. But all of us, all or none, it's way bigger than a job, as you said. So, how do we continue this effort?
What I really want to do, now that you brought it up, Vicki, I want to organize a chapter of All of Us or None in East Palo Alto and push an East Palo Alto agenda, because y'all need an agenda push. Now, what I think I need to take the responsibility of doing is coming home, helping you learn how to fight back.
So what kind of difficulties are you having?
How can we think this thing through in such a...
What I'm most excited about is the tremendous potential and enthusiasm of people to do this work. It's almost like everyone is hungry to unite and to work together and to fight back against the tremendous discrimination that we face.
Since we left New Orleans, a website that came up, a listserv that came up, we done put a brochure out about felons and 12-step meetings.
I think our long-term goal for All of Us or None is to build a really powerful political movement of people who have been through the prison system, who have encountered discrimination and oppression in their lives, so that we can win some really major change in our society.
I really see this as being much broader. It's an anti-prison movement. It's a youth, criminalization of youth, challenging that. But it's also a movement for our seniors, you know what I mean? What about these brothers and sisters who are coming out and they're geriatrics, you know what I mean? And they're not gonna have incomes, so it's a fight for our elders. It's an environmental justice movement. Prisons devastate our environment. They're devastating our communities. It's an economic justice movement. So really bridging all of those, and so that people can see how all of these issues are just inextricably connected and interwoven.
Affecting public policy is really hard. I think that it takes mobilization on many, many different fronts. It takes everything from community organizing to building alliances and coalitions of organizations that have the same human rights and civil rights agendas, to influencing individual legislators and building some kind of public education campaign around the issues and the discrimination that face us, so that we have the support of people who are not felons. And one of the things in All of Us or None that we're doing is to train people in things like media skills, so that when they do public speaking, we have many, many speakers who are accomplished, who are eloquent, who can put out talking points.
So when you ask me the question, what must we do? We must organize, organize, and organize.
Right now, we've seen 2-3 generations at the last gathering, but I want to see this as being something sustainable 25 years from now. And I want to see my daughter, I never wanted to go through the pain or the struggle of incarceration, but I want her to know what her dad's been through, and her mother's actually been through that too. And I want her to continue to pick up, to pick up that torch and continue to struggle.
And now you wanna call us outlaws, 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 outlaws. You wanna call us outlaws, 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 outlaws. From slaves to outlaw, it didn't take long, cause you couldn't stand to have a race of people so strong. You chains, you beat us, you forced early graves on the people you ridiculed and once called slaves. And now you wanna call us outlaws, outlaws, outlaws. You wanna call us outlaws, 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 outlaws. They call him outlaw from the day he was born. They say his destiny was to make a crazy world more.